Welcome back to my channel. We are going to be reading, or in your case, listening to Year 2 of the Enchanted Ones. So grab your popcorn, your drinks, or your blanket if you're planning on listening to this while you're asleep, and let's begin with Chapter 22. Chapter 22, When the Train Moved Forward. Time skip, September 1st, start of Year 2. The train smelled like steam, old wood, and excitement that hadn't decided whether it wanted to be joy or dread. Hayley sat by the window with Iris pressed close beside her, their knees touching. Iris leaned her head against the glass, tracing invisible patterns with her finger. Iris looks over to Hayley and she muttered, "You're doing the thing." Hayley looks at her confused. "What thing?" "The quiet thing, where you pretend you're not nervous." Hayley glanced down at her hands. The rune on her palm was faint but present, warm like a living ember. "I just don't want it to start again," she admitted. "Not on the first day of second year." Across the compartment, James was mid-story, arms flailing as Sirius laughed far too loudly. Remus listened with a book half open, smiling softly, while Peter passed around sweets like offering to stay including. Sirius leaned over the seats. "Year 2. Bigger halls, bigger rules, bigger trouble." "Please don't encourage it," Remus sighed. Hayley smiled despite herself. Down the corridor, Regulus stood with a group of Slytherins. He glanced in their direction just once before looking away again. Hayley felt her magic stir, then settle. The train lurched forward, and Hogwarts was ready for them. Time skip, McGonagall. McGonagall called Hayley in before the bell rang. The office was quiet, controlled, a place where magic knew better than to misbehave. The assessment took nearly the entire hour. McGonagall tested wand stability, emotional grounding, magical response. Hayley sat, breathed, answered honestly when she could. Halfway through, the ink pot rattled. McGonagall didn't react. She simply waited. "Your magic escalates when you suppress it," she said calmly, "not when you feel." Hayley swallowed. "So, what do I do in class?" McGonagall handled her the grounding stone again. "You stay present, you don't rush, and you let your friend anchor you." Hayley blinked. "My friends." McGonagall's mouth twitched. "They already do." Chapter 23, DOTDA class. Time skip, hallway. Hayley leaves McGonagall's classroom after McGonagall checks in on her and her magic. She breathes in out to calm her nerves, and she notices Iris walking over. Iris looks at her. "Hey, what did Professor McGonagall say?" Hayley looks away for a moment before back at Iris. "She told me to stay present, not to rush and let my friends anchor me." Iris nods. "Okay, but we better get to class, or Professor Tenebris will be wondering where we are." Hayley nods, and together, Hayley and Iris walks to class. Time skip, defense of the dark arts. Hayley and Iris walks into class just before Professor Tenebris starts his lessons. "Cutting it close," Iris muttered under her breath. At the front of the room, Professor Tenebris stood beside his desk, tall and sharp-featured, his dark robes immaculate as ever. His eyes flicked up instantly, nothing escaped his notice. "Miss Potter, Miss Evans," he said smoothly, "how kind of you to join us." Hayley's stomach dipped, but she straightened her shoulders and held his gaze. "Our apologies, Professor," Iris said quickly. "We were with Professor McGonagall." Tenebris studied them for a moment longer, then gave a thin smile. "Very well, take your seats." They moved quickly, sliding into their usual desks near the middle of the room. Hayley set her bag down and rested her hands flat on the table, pressing her palms into the cool wood. "Present," she reminded herself. The door opens again, and everyone turns to see who it was, and Hayley groans as she hides her face. James looked far too cheerful for someone about to be noticed. Sirius wore that unmistakable grin, already planning trouble. Remus scanned the room calmly, eyes observant. Peter hovered close to Remus, clutching his bag. Iris leans closer to Hayley. "Isn't that James's 'I did something terrible' grin?" Hayley moves her hand from her face, and she sees the grin and she sighs. "Yeah, But the question is, who is his victim now? Professor Tenebris shot the boys a sharp look enough to slice glass. 5 points from Gryffindor, he said coolly, without breaking stride. Seats now. James mouthed, worth it, as they slid into the empty desks behind Hayley and Iris. A few minutes past the start. As Tenebris began speaking again, Remus leaned forward slightly, voice above a whisper. You all right? He asked Hayley gently. Hayley stiffened for half a second, then nodded. Yeah, just new term thing. Sirius leaned in next, ignoring Iris's unimpressed look. McGonagall dragged you off earlier. Thought you'd exploded or something. James looks at Sirius. Padfoot. I'm fine, Hayley said quickly, lowering her voice. My magic's just unsettled. She wanted to check in. Remus' expression softened with understanding. It happens, especially when you grow faster than expected. Hayley blinked. You sound like you're 80. Remus smiled faintly. I get that a lot. James gave his sister a reassuring nod. If anything goes weird, Prong's excellent at distracting professors. Tenebris's voice sharpened from the front. Mr. Potter. James froze. Yes, sir. Perhaps you'd like to anchor yourself to the lesson. Sirius choked on a laugh. James sat up straight, innocent. Of course, Professor. Hayley bit the inside of her cheek to keep herself from smiling. About a minute later, Hayley notices Lily talking to Dorcas, but she sees her smile not reaching her eyes like they did when she introduced herself when she was in first year, and Hayley's expression softened sadly as she thought about the last time Marlene told her about Snape and Lily. Sirius flicked his wand under the desk, sending a folded bit of parchment skidding towards James. It unfolded itself into a crude doodle of Tenebris with bat wings, and James snorted. Peter followed suit, whispering, I heard he sleeps upside down. That's a rumor, Remus muttered. A hope, Sirius corrected. Hayley felt a laugh bubble up before she could stop it. The tension in her chest eased, warmth replacing the tight pull of magic. James leaned forward again. See, completely stable, laughter-based magical therapy. That's not a thing, Iris whispered. It absolutely is, Sirius said. We just invented it. Remus shook his head fondly. You're all going to get detention. Together, James said proudly, like family. Half an hour later, as Hayley successfully disrupted her enchantment, she felt it steady, calm and controlled. She glanced back briefly. Remus gave her a small, approving nod. James flashed a grin. Sirius gave her an exaggerated thumbs up. Peter smiled, relieved. She felt anchored. Everyone finishing up and heading to their next class. As chairs scraped back and students began packing up, Sirius stretched dramatically. Well, he said, loud enough for Tenebris to hear, that was delightfully grim. Out, Tenebris said flatly. They poured into the corridor together, laughter echoing off the stone walls. James slung an arm around Hayley's shoulders. You did great, by the way. She smiled, warmth settling deep in her chest. Second year didn't feel so terrifying anymore, not with anchors like these. Chapter 24, Dancing Teacups and Worries. Time skip, hallways to Charms class. Hayley and Iris walks over to their next class talking. I wonder what we're going to learn about in Charms. Same Iris, I'm just hoping that my powers don't play up while I'm in class. Iris stops to look at her. You're with me, I'll make sure they won't. Hayley stops too and looks at Iris, and she smiles before noticing Lily walk past slightly angered and worried before she feels an arm wrapping around her. James smiled at his sister and Iris. So, the both of you, since I'm going to Hogsmeade in a couple of weeks, do you want anything? Sweets, joke shop stuff? I hear Zonko's has something that explodes into dancing teacups. Iris perked instantly. Dancing teacups. Hayley looks at James suspiciously. Why are you being nice? You only do this when you're either feeling guilty or planning someone illegal. James placed a hand over his heart in mock offense. Wow, that hurts. I can't spoil my favorite sister. You have one sister, Hayley shot back. And she's my favorite, he replied easily, ruffling her hair despite her half-hearted attempt to dodge. So, anything you want. Hayley hesitated, glancing once more down the corridor Lily had disappeared into, that strange, unsettled feeling still in her chest. Then she sighed softly and looked back at James. Chocolate frogs, she said at last, and maybe some of those calming draft sweets, just in case. James's grin softened just a fraction. You got it. The bell rang sharply, echoing through the halls. Charms, Iris said, tugging Hayley forward. Come on. Hayley and Iris ran to their classes. Chapter 25, The Shield That Listened. Time skip, Charms. Hayley walks into class with Iris, and she breathes in and out to calm her nerves as she walks to her seat, which is next to Iris. You got this, Iris whispers as they take their seats. Professor Flitwick hops up onto his stack of books, clapping his hands. Today, class, we will be learning a basic defensive charm, the Aegis Charms. It creates a small magical barrier. Not strong enough to stop curses, of course, but perfect for deflecting light objects and minor spell effects. He flicks his wand, and a shimmering oval of light appears briefly in front of him before fading. A simple incantation, Aegis. The class lifts their wands. Hayley hesitates before raising hers. Iris leans slightly closer, their shoulders brushing, slow and steady. Aegis, she whispers. A thin, translucent shield forms in front of her, but instead of hovering still like everyone else's, it ripples like the surface of water. A soft glow spreads through it. The air around Hayley shifts, warm and charged. The shield widens, curves, wraps. It doesn't just sit in front of her. It gently surrounds her desk in a protective arc, humming softly like it's alive. Several students gasp. Hayley stares, heart pounding. I didn't mean. Iris reaches out, touching Hayley's wrist. Hey, look at me, she whispers. Breathe. Hayley does, clinging to Iris's voice like a lifeline. The glowing barrier slowly shrinks back into the small, ordinary shield it was meant to be, before fading completely. The room is silent. Professor Flitwick blinks rapidly. Well, that was remarkably advanced magical shaping for a second year. Hayley's cheeks burn. Am I in trouble? Quite the opposite, Flitwick says gently, though his eyes flicked towards the classroom door with concern. But we may want to. Keep a closer eye on that magic on yours. Time skip, dinner hall. By dinner time, the word has spread. Flitwick explains how Hayley's shield charm didn't just form, it adapted. Sprout mentions how plants lean toward Hayley in herbology. Hooch nots that wind currents shift around her during flying lessons. But what stands out most? Her friend, Flitwick says softly. They stabilize her. Evans, Potter, Lupin, Black, even young Regulus. They instinctively ground her when her magic spikes. McGonagall folds her hands. That may be the most important magic of all. Time skip, Gryffindor common room. The Gryffindor common room glows softly with firelight and floating embers. James and Sirius are sprawled near the hearth arguing about Quidditch, voices rising and falling in familiar chaos. Remus reads quietly on the sofa, while Peter dozes with a half-eaten chocolate frog on his chest. Lily and Iris sat together near the windows, whispering over homework. Hayley sits curled up in one of the armchairs, parchment balanced on her knees. Every so often, she glances toward the portrait hole, where earlier she'd seen Sophia lingering just outside with Regulus, neither of them able to come in, but both of them staying anyway, just to make sure she was all right. The thought warms her chest. She dips her quill in ink and begins to write. September 14th, 1972. Gryffindor Tower. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Dear Mum and Dad, second year has started, and Hogwarts feels bigger and louder than ever. James keeps pretending he's suddenly grown very tall, but I think Sirius might be hexing his shoes when he's not looking. Charms were strange today. We were learning a shielding spell, but when I tried it, my magic did something different. It wrapped around me instead of just staying in front of me. Professor Flitwick said it wasn't dangerous, just unusual, but it made everyone stare. Sometimes it feels like the magic inside me is growing faster than I am, but I'm not alone. Iris sits with me in every class. Lily holds my hand when I get nervous. Remus reminds me to breathe when things feel too loud. Sirius makes me laugh when I want to hide. And even though they're in Slytherin, Sophia and Regulus still watch out for me. They waited outside the common room tonight just to make sure I was okay. It makes Hogwarts feel a little less scary. I promise I'm being careful. I promise I'm safe. I miss you both very much. Love always, Hayley. Chapter 26. Someone to pull me back. Time skip outside. A few weeks later, Hayley was outside with Iris talking until she sees James's walking over. He slowed as he approached, eyes scanning the area out of habit before he sat down with the both of them. His posture was casual, but there was a tension in his shoulders that Hayley recognized immediately. "Will you two be okay without us here?" James asked, glancing between them. His gaze lingered on Hayley a second longer. "Especially because of your powers, Hayley. I know they're haywire at the moment." Hayley didn't answer right away. She looked down at her wand resting in her palm, turning it slowly between her fingers. The magic beneath her skin stirred faintly in response, like it always did lately. Too quick, too sensitive. For a moment, doubt flickered across her face. Then she looked back up at James and nodded. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I have Iris to pull me back when I spiral." Iris smiled at that before wrapping her arms around Hayley without hesitation. "Always." Hayley let herself lean into the hug, closing her eyes for just a second longer than necessary. James watched them, jaw tightening, not with distrust, but with relief he hadn't quite learned how to show yet. He reached out and squeezed Hayley's shoulder gently. "All right," he said, "but if anything feels off, anything, you tell me or Padfoot or Mooney, someone." Hayley smiled up at him, softer this time. "I promise." James stood after a moment, giving Iris a grateful nod before slipping away. He glanced back once more, just to make sure Hayley was still steady before heading off to rejoin his friends. Hayley exhaled slowly, magic settling again beneath her skin, but with Iris besides her, she wasn't alone. Chapter 27. Woven in Gold. Time skip, courtyard, Saturday morning. Mage female. Hayley's POV. Second years weren't allowed to go to Hogsmeade, which Hayley found unfair as she sat on the stone wall near the gates, chin in her hands as she watches the older students file out with scarves, mittens, and loud chatter. Her brother walked ahead with Sirius and Remus, Peter trailing behind them with a bag of coins already jingling. James looked way too happy for someone abandoning his little sister. Hayley narrowed her eyes. "Traitor," she muttered under her breath. Beside her, Iris bumped her shoulder gently. "You look like you're about to hex him." "I might," Hayley replied. "Just a little one, something embarrassing. Purple hair for a week." "Tempting," Iris snorted. James turned back one last time, grinning. He waves dramatically. Hayley crossed her arms, but waved back anyway. "Ready to do stuff like reading in classes?" she asked, trying not to sound disappointed. Iris nodded. "Yeah, library first. If we're stuck here, we might as well beat everyone in charms." Hayley perked up. "Race you." Time skip, library. The library smelled like parchment and dust and old magic. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, lighting up floating specks like tiny stars. They spread books everywhere. Charms, defensive spells. A weird one about protective wands Hayley wasn't supposed to understand yet, but she did. Magic has been strange lately, stronger like it listened too closely. Hayley frowned at a paragraph about binding energy into shape through will. "That's weird," she murmured. "It says you can weave magic without a wand if you..." A sudden crack of light sparked from her fingers, and the air warped, and the pages every book flipped at once. Candles flickered blue. Iris froze. "Hayley." "I didn't mean to." Magic surged like her chest cracked open, and something ancient spilled out. Words slipped from her mouth without thinking. Not Latin, not any spells she knew, just instinct. A soft, glowing thread snapped into existence between the bookshelves. It formed a ting shield, delicate, shimmering gold like woven sunlight. Both girls stared. Iris's voice dropped to a whisper. "Did you just invent another new spell?" Hayley looks over at Iris. "I think I did." The shield flickered, unstable. The air hummed too loud and Hayley's breathing sped up. "I can't stop it." Iris grabbed her hands. "Hey, look at me, not the magic me." Hayley focused as she looks at Iris, her freckles, her steady green eyes, the warmth of her grip. "Breathe with me," Iris said softly. "In, out, you're okay." The glow softened, and the shield dissolved like mist. Silence returned, they both exhaled. "Okay," Iris said finally. "So, 3 things." "Yeah." 1, that was incredible. And 2, you absolutely cannot tell James, unless you want him following you around like an overprotective Kneasel for the rest of your life. Hayley bursts out laughing. "Deal, and what's number 3? Iris looks at her. "You have to tell Professor McGonagall, since she asked you to." Hayley nods. Time skip, Hogsmeade. "Dear." James's POV. James tugged Remus aside near Zonko's. "We need better lies," he muttered. Remus sighed. "James." "No, listen, Hayley's not little anymore. She notices things, Iris too. They're smart. Too smart." Sirius shoved his hands into his coat pockets. "He's right. Your ill only works so many times. Full moon happens like clockwork." Peter nodded nervously. "They'll connect it." Remus looked tired already. That quiet, bracing kind of tired. "Okay," he said softly. "We'll figure something out." James nodded, but his chest felt heavy as this wasn't about just Remus. It was Hayley, his baby sister. Too curious, too brave, too much like him. If she ever found out, if anything ever hurt her, his jaw tightened. He'd burn the whole world down first. Sirius clapped his shoulders. "Oi, stop brooding, you look like Mooney." James forces a grin. "Let's just get their sweets." Remus smiled faintly as they start to walk again, but James glanced toward the castle in the distance. Just for a second, making sure it was still there, making sure she was safe. Time skip, evening, Gryffindor common room. Mage female. Hayley's POV. Firelight, loud firelight. The kind that popped and crackled, while half the house talked over each other. Chess pieces clacked aggressively near the hearth. Someone was laughing too hard, while someone else was yelling about stolen chocolate frogs. The older students had come back from Hogsmeade hours ago, cold-cheeked and loud and smelling like butterbeer and sugar. Now the common room was chaos. James and Sirius were sprawled on the rug, by the fire arguing over wizard chess like it was life or death. "That's illegal," Sirius accused. "You just don't understand strategy," James shot back smugly. "You flip the board." Advanced strategy. Across the table, Remus was pretending to read while secretly smiling at them, and Peter cheered way too loudly every time James won. On one sofa, Lily, Marlene, and Mary were sorting Honeyjuke's sweets into piles like a trade market. "2 fizzing Whizbees for 1 chocolate frog," Mary declared. "That's robbery," Marlene said. "It's economics," Lily replied calmly. Wrappers littered the table. Someone had already set off a Zonko's sneezing powder bomb. The whole room smelled like caramel and smoke and sugar, which was home for Hayley. Right by the window, tucked into her favorite armchair, Hayley curled her legs under herself with her diary on her knees. Beside her, Iris worked on homework, occasionally glancing up whenever James got too loud. Hayley dipped her quill and starts to write. 17th November, 1973. Gryffindor Tower. Dear Mum and Dad. James went to Hogsmeade this morning and came back like he personally conquered it. He's being unbearably smug about it. He did bring the sweets I wanted, so I suppose I won't duel him, Yet. Classes are going well. Professor Flitwick says my charm control is advanced for my age, which I think means I talk too much in lessons, but he's being polite. Something strange happened today, though. Don't worry, I'm fine. I sort of accidentally made a new spell. Not from a book, it just happened. Like my magic knew what to do before I did. It made a little shield out of light. Iris says it looked like woven gold. It didn't hurt. It felt warm, like home. Is that normal? Please don't tell James. He's across the room right now and already tried to fight Sirius over a chess bishop. If he knew I invented another spell, he'd follow me around like a bodyguard. I miss you both loads. Tell Dad I'm still beating everyone at wizard chess, and tell Mum the greenhouse smells like the garden at home. Love always, Hayley. P.S. James still snores, even louder now, apparently. Iris agrees. She folded the letter with a small smile. Behind her, however, Sirius yelled. Mooney, tell HIM he CHATD. I did not cheat. You absolutely cheated. Hayley snorted as Iris leaned over. Did you tell them about the spell? Maybe. Brave. Or doomed. They giggled quietly, while across the room James yelled. Who took my fudge? Sirius, I swear. The common room erupted again, and somehow, even with all the noise, Hayley felt warm all the way through. Chapter 28, held in check. Time skip, Charm's class. Hayley walks into Charm's class with Iris as they took their seats. Iris took her seat next to Hayley. Are you okay? I mean, after what happened in the library. Hayley looks over to Iris, and she thinks for a moment before nodding. Hopefully. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Before Iris could respond, a sharp tap, tap, tap echoed through the room. Professor Flitwick hopped up onto his stack of books at the front, smiling brightly. Good afternoon, everyone. Wands at the ready, please. The chatter died down as the students straightened in their seats. Today, Flitwick continued, we'll be practicing precision charms, specifically Mobiliarbus. This spell is not about strength, but control. You will be moving the object, not lifting it, and certainly not throwing it. Hayley looks over to Iris worriedly, but Iris nods to calm her nervous. After Flitwick demonstrates the spell, everyone starts to do the spell. Hayley looks at her wand as she thought about what happened at the end of year 1, and before she came to class in the library before breathing in and out and does the spell. Mobiliarbus. Her block slid forward across the desk, smooth and controlled. It jerked at the end, just enough to make her heart stutter before it stops. Besides her, Iris let out a quiet breath. The class continued for the next hour. Blocks glided, books inched across the desks. One student sent theirs skidding straight onto the floor, earning a gentle reminder from Flitwick about wrist movement and focus. Hayley felt her attention fixed on her work. Every spell responded, but one demanded effort, like holding a door shut against rising wind. Whenever her focus slipped, the block vibrated faintly, her magic pushing harder than she wanted it to. Flitwick paused by her desk, watching the block settle perfectly into place. Excellent control, Miss Potter, he said warmly. Hayley inclined her head, not trusting herself to speak. When Flitwick finally announced, and that concludes today's lesson. Hayley lowered her wand slowly, her shoulders aching with the effort of restraint. Students packed up, the room filling with sound again as blocks were collected and chairs scraped back. Iris leaned toward her. You made it through. Hayley allowed herself a small, tired smile as they stood. Barely. They followed the rest of the class out, the door closing behind them. Getting through the hour hadn't calmed her magic. It had only proven how much attention it demanded to keep it in check. Chapter 29, not just a prank. Time skip, dormitories. Hayley sat on one of the couches with her diary open, and she looks over to James and his friends. James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter were huddled near the staircase to the boys' dormitories, heads bent close together. Not their usual loud, reckless huddle. This was different. Sirius wasn't laughing, Not properly, his grin was sharp but focused, calculating. James looked intense, determined. His hands were moving as he spoke in quick, urgent whispers. Remus looked pale, in that tired that had nothing to do with studying type of way. His shoulders were tense, like he was already arguing against whatever James was proposing. Peter stood close, wide-eyed, hanging on every word. Hayley narrowed her eyes slightly. That wasn't prank posture, that was plan posture. Their voices carried in fragments, but too soft to fully catch. Next year, James murmured, fierce and certain. It's possible, I've read about it, Sirius added, low and serious in a way he rarely was. Remus' voice cuts in, sharper. You don't even know what that would mean. Peter swallowed audibly. If we did it together. Remus shook his head. Hayley could see that much. His expression was tight, conflicted. It's dangerous. James' reply was immediate, quiet, unshakable. So are you, every month. The fire popped loudly, swallowing the next words. Hayley frowned. That didn't sound like mischief. That sounded like something else entirely. Sirius clapped James on the shoulder. Firm, decisive. Remus looked like he wanted to protest again, but something in his expression softened. Peter nodded rapidly, as if agreeing before he even knew the full plan. Whatever it was serious. And it was secret. Hayley stared at them for another second, before shaking her head lightly. Boys, she thought to herself as she thinks that they're probably planning something that would get them all detention for the rest of their Hogwarts careers. She returned to her diary, though she made a quiet mental note. Whatever it wasn't just a prank. And James looked like he'd already made up his mind. Dear Mom and Dad. 1st June 1974. Gryffindor Tower. I can't believe it's already June. It feels like yesterday it was November, and yet it also feels like a lifetime ago. I suppose that's what growing up feels like. Everything stretches and shrinks at the same time. But something is going on with James. He's talking about something that I couldn't exactly catch. He, Sirius, and Peter were whispering with Remus near the stairs tonight. Not their usual, we're about to prank Filch whispering. It was different. Quieter, Sirius. James had that look on his face. The one he gets when he's decided something and there's no moving him from it. I couldn't hear properly from where I was sitting, but I caught bits. Next year. Possible. Dangerous. And Remus sounded upset, not angry, just worried. James said something that made Remus go very still. I don't know what they're planning, but it isn't harmless, and it isn't small. Part of me wants to march over there and demand to know what they're up to. I'm his sister. I should know if he's about to do something reckless. But another part of me knows that whatever it is, it's about Remus. James has been different where Remus is concerned. Protective in a way that isn't loud or showy. It's quieter, steadier. Like he's decided that if the world tilts even slightly the wrong way, he'll be the one to shove it back into place. I don't think this is about trouble. I think it's about loyalty, which somehow makes it more worrying. He forgets sometimes that he isn't invincible. I suppose that's what brothers do. They charge first and think later. Still, I'll keep an eye on him next year. Year 3 for me, year 4 for him. That feels strange to write. Everything feels like it's shifting, not just classes or exams or houses earning points. Something bigger, like we're all standing on the edge of growing into people we haven't quite met yet. November taught me that things can change very quickly. Maybe June is teaching me that we can change too. I'm not the same girl who started this year. And I don't think James is the same boy either. I just hope whatever he's planning, he remembers he doesn't have to carry the world by himself. Love always. Hayley. Hayley finishes her writing, and she puts down her diary, but before she could get up, she notices Lily walking over to the girls' dormitories. Hayley also noticed the look on her face, which is mad, and she looks over to James as he walks over to check in on her. Hayley sits up properly. James, did you do something again? James stops in his tracks and looks at her before thinking about something he did, which surprisingly was nothing before he shook his head, which made Hayley raise a brow. "I mean," he started slowly, "define something." Hayley stared at him. "James." He frowned slightly, genuinely confused now. "No, I didn't. I haven't done anything, not to Evans or Snape." He gestured vaguely toward the staircase. "I was being normal." Hayley looks at him for a second before she sees him getting an idea and looking around. James manages to find Iris and walks over to her. "Iris." Iris looks up from her homework and she looks annoyed. "I'm not going to sweet-talk my sister for you again." James stops before shaking his head. "It's not that. Surprisingly, I didn't do anything, and me and Hayley are confused on why Lily is mad. So I wanted to ask you to check in on your sister." Iris's face slowly changed from annoyed to surprised as she sees the genuine confusion on James's face. Then her eyes flick over to Hayley, who is just as confused before she looks back at James. "Okay, fine." She puts away her homework and she walks up to the girls' dormitories to talk to Lily. Chapter 30, the year it starts to crack. Time skip, Great Hall. The Great Hall was brighter than usual, pouring through the enchanted ceiling and glinting off golden plates. The hum of conversation felt different, lighter, almost restless. The end of term always carried that buzz. Hayley walked in beside Iris, their shoulders brushing as they talked in low voices about Lily. "I just don't understand," Iris murmured. "They used to spend all their time together." Hayley frowned. Something's definitely wrong. That was when Dorcas approached them, arms folded tightly across her chest. Her expression wasn't dramatic. It was annoyed, protective annoyed. "Are we talking about Lily?" she asked bluntly. Hayley nodded immediately. "What's going on?" Dorcas exhaled sharply. "Snape." Iris stiffened slightly as she remembers that Lily mentioned Snape during her vents. Dorcas leaned in closer so no one else could overhear. "He's drifting, and it's not subtle anymore." Hayley's brows pulled together. "Drifting how?" "The Slytherin boys," Dorcas said flatly. "Mulciber, Avery, all of them. They've been in his ear for months. Dark magic, pure blood nonsense, the whole thing." Iris looked uncomfortable. "He's always been friends with some of them." "Yes," Dorcas replied, "but not like this. He laughs at things he wouldn't have before. He doesn't defend Lily when they make comments, and he started avoiding her." Hayley's stomach twisted. "He's under pressure," Dorcas continued. "You can see it. They're pulling him one way, Lily's pulling him another, and he doesn't want to lose either side." "And my sister?" Iris asked softly. Dorcas' jaw tightened. She's pretending she doesn't notice, but she does. There was a heavy pause between them. Hayley looked toward the Slytherin table instinctively. Snape was seated there, shoulders slightly hunched, listening to something Avery was saying. He didn't look over once. But she notices that one of his hands is in his pocket and knows that he's still holding on to the drawing. "This is going to explode," Dorcas muttered. Before Hayley could respond, the chatter across the hall began to die down, and Dorcas does a little nod to the girls before heading to her table like the girls did with theirs. Professor Dumbledore had risen. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled behind his half-moon spectacles as he surveyed the students. "Well," he began warmly, "another year draws to a close, a year of triumphs, trails, and I must admit an impressive number of detentions." A ripple of laughter passed through the hall. James and Sirius looked far too pleased with themselves. Dumbledore continued, "The house cups standing have been tallied." The hourglasses lining the walls shimmered as the gems shifted slightly. In fourth place, Hufflepuff. Polite applause. In third place, Slytherin. A mixed reaction, some cheers, some groans. In second place, Ravenclaw. Louder clapping now, and Dumbledore paused deliberately, letting the tension stretch. And this year's house cup goes to Gryffindor. The red and gold banners overhead burst into brighter color. The Gryffindor table erupted into cheers. James shot to his feet immediately, Sirius right beside him. Remus clapped with a soft smile, while Peter looked like he'd personally won a Quidditch World Cup. Hayley laughed despite herself as Iris squeezed her hand excitedly. Next to Iris, Lily applauded politely, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes and Snape didn't clap at all. Time skip, the final feast. Platters of food appeared in dazzling waves. Roasted potatoes, golden pies, glazed carrots, fresh breads, treacle tarts stacked high. The atmosphere shifted fully now. Relief, excitement, the kind of giddy energy that only came from knowing exams were finished and trunks were packed. James stood on the bench at one point and raised a goblet dramatically. To another year of legendary mischief. "Sit down, Potter," Lily called, though there was reluctant amusement in her tone. Sirius grinned wickedly, to next year being even worse. Remus sighed. "I'm surrounded by idiots." Peter laughed anyway. Hayley caught Lily watching Snape from across the hall again. And this time, Snape looked back. But only for a second. Then Avery leaned toward him, whispering something that made Snape's expression harden. He looked away first. Lily's shoulders dropped just slightly. Dorcas noticed too. The feast went on. Laughter, plans for summer, promises to write. But underneath it all was the faintest thread of something shifting. Something ending. Time skip, train home. The scarlet train let out a long whistle as steam billowed into the warm June air. Students hugged friends, promised letters, argued about who would win next year's Quidditch Cup. Hayley leaned out of the compartment window briefly, breathing in the last of the castle-scented air. Iris was beside her, already planning summer outings. Further down the platform, James was animatedly explaining something to Sirius with wild hand gestures. Remus listened, thoughtful as ever. Peter hovered close. Lily stood a little apart. Snape was at the far end of the platform, surrounded by Slytherins. For a moment, just one, Lily and Snape's eyes met across the distance. Neither of them moved. Then the train whistle blew again. Doors shut and the train began to roll forward. As Hogwarts faded behind them, Hayley felt it, the strange weight of growing up settling quietly in her chest. Some friendships strengthened, some cracked. And next year felt like it would change everything.